Hello and welcome to Cirro's Sprint 4 presentation. I'm Nicole Stocks. I am a co-producer and a VFX artist on this project.
I'm Jameson Piper, and I was co-producer, UI, and level designer on this project.
I'm Chris Cardeman, and I'm going to be working as a systems programmer.
Hi, I'm Peter, and I'm one of the gameplay programmers.
I'm Karan Singh. I'm a programmer, sound designer, and composer on this project.
Hi, I'm Wesley Chun. I'm the 3D prop artist on this project.
Hi, I'm Dylan Marks, and I'm a 3D artist.
Hi, I'm Yuchun Zhang. I'm a 2D artist and visual effects artist for this project.
My name is Raymond Foster, and I worked as a level designer on this project.
Alongside the team, we have two other students helping us out, and they are Rachel Flatley working on our 3D character, as well as Louis Artali helping with our puzzle design.
Cirro is a 3D platforming exploration game in which the player uses the magic of wind to traverse floating islands and solve puzzles in order to restore the islands to their original positions.
Alright, now we'll hop right into our demo to show off some of the new aspects of our game. One thing off the bat you can see is the replacement of the blue box airstreams with these new VFX. There's a lot of kind of iteration to be done on that, but it looks a lot better than what we had previously. And then as we're on this new puzzle island, we really focused on having the ruins aspect of the island and like what once was. So building up that level design and pieces and set dressing and the crystals with the statues, kind of making the player just have this explorative feel as they're wondering what was going on and what's the story behind the island. And then we'll jump over here. And one thing we did implement was crystal shards, the blue crystal shards versus the red crystals in the new build, because the blue ones will only turn on airstreams, but the red ones affect environmental objects and pieces to help solve puzzles, and we wanted to kind of differentiate those because we have main crystals and then that are the actual target, and the red ones just kind of help with the environment. And as we glide over here, one thing we did do this sprint was refine gliding with controller support, because we got a lot of feedback during playtesting that it didn't feel very great or fluid on controller, so we worked to make that feel a lot better. And this is another new island that we have implemented. We have now silhouettes to preview what you're going to turn on before you turn it on. It'll be shown a little bit better later here. And right here, you'll see that there's kind of a silhouette that pops up. We're going to work with colors to make sure that it's very different. And we got some feedback that it's kind of jarring and it just pops into place. So maybe making that fade into place. And here you'll be able to see the variable airstreams that we have. So when it's daytime, the stream is higher. And when it's nighttime, the stream gets lower. And as we slow down our time cycle into the future, that'll have more of an effect. And then here's our guidebook as we implement that, and we'll be filling that with all of the player information that they'll need as we move into Sprint 5. So the goal of Sprint 4 was to create the beta version of the game, and for Cirro, that meant implementing all of the core design features that would help guide the player in the game, like the guidebook, as well as some small but important programming features. We refined and optimized art to make sure that it would function well in the game and also look good, and we also focused on implementing the character and animations. We've got a lot of cool new puzzle and island designs to see in the game, so let's get into it.
One major change made to Airstreams this sprint is that they now support variable height and speed based on time of day. Additionally, VFX have been implemented and scale with the size of the hitbox. Additionally, gliding now supports partial inputs when using a controller joystick. Spawn points have also been implemented this sprint. They serve as sort of a respawn point for when the player falls off the island. It detects the nearest spawn point on the nearest previously visited island and respawns the player there. This also led to some bug fixes with the kill box. Moving into Sprint 5, I will be helping out with the animations as well as bug fixes.
Because we're targeting a user experience that is primarily controller-based, this sprint I spent some time ensuring that all our menus were navigable by any combination of mouse and keyboard or controller. I also helped to implement the functionality of our main menu, adding on some quality of life features like button highlights and general polish. These changes are primarily aimed at accessibility and ensuring that players will have a seamless transition no matter what type of input system they're using. Working off the changes made to our main menu and our efforts to support controllers, our guidebook will also be getting an overhaul with visual enhancements and accessibility in mind. We're also in the process of removing the gust charges lettering attached to the character's back, representing gust charges in the game world instead through the staff, which will be colored differently based on how many charges you have left. Throughout Sprint 5, I'm planning on continuing to refine and enhance our existing user interface systems, while also providing additional help to the rest of the programming team with various bug fixes where necessary.
Now that we have the player rig in the game, we were able to get to work on setting up animations. So Wes got a ton of animations in the game that I worked on getting hooked up to the scripts. There still needs to be more polish done on transitions and timing, but we were able to get basically all of the movement already implemented at this sprint. We also worked on getting some crystal activation preview to help players understand what they're interacting with based on the feedback. Like I just said, there still needs to be a ton of work done on animations and making sure everything feels right, and that's just going to take a lot of adjustments and playtesting to figure out the sweet spot for player movement and animation. You can tell by looking at the old versus current animation tree that there's still a lot of work to do in transitioning to a more efficient blend tree system. And as always, there's going to be more bug fixes.
During this sprint, we were able to get the UI in our main menu functional with the help of Chris, and get the art implemented in the guidebook courtesy of Yu Chen. We worked together to get the terrain in place for all the islands that had been reworked, adding paths and other visual polish to the game. We started figuring out what text and visuals will be going into the guidebook and the tutorial world that has been created. Yu Chen and I will be working together next sprint to get these finalized. In Sprint 5, we'll be focusing on polish, and that includes the terrain that we use for the islands. Making sure no grass is overlapping with game objects is a must. We'll be implementing the guidebook and tutorial text, as well as polishing the UI in the main menu to fit our vision.
Looking at the level design progress we've made in Sprint 4, one of the biggest things we did was adjust the FOV, because it lets the player see a lot more, and it was difficult to design things before when the camera was so zoomed in and the player was basically just looking at the ground. We've also begun to flesh out the environments with some foliage and additional set dressing, and we've changed some of the islands, making them bigger and changing their shape to give the player more room, have things not feel so cramped, and also fit into the narrative of the islands were put together and were broken apart. For our next steps in Sprint 5, we're going to be incorporating feedback from the playtest next week, as well as making some guidance and feedback adjustments, particularly with the crystal preview feature, as well as filling out the world more. So the picture in the bottom left, that circled area is going to be turned into kind of rock chunks of where the island was separated and then broke apart to help guide the player, but also fit into our narrative.
So for environment art, a lot of this sprint was reworking and polishing. Before this, it was kind of like this really messy workflow of trying to get the islands. So I ended up just making tutorial videos for our designers, so they're able to just make the islands on their own and they can iterate it with themselves in case things aren't fitting or whatever. I also was polishing a small playable area that you can see on the right. And that area is supposed to be our tutorial. And then we were having issues with our old trees, so I ended up coming up with a new way to do it, where it's through vertex normals, and we have this slight gradient that I can change to get some cool colors going on there.
For Sprint 4, I focused on creating and implementing character animations to give some life to our character. All movement animations are now in the editor. For Sprint 5, I'm going to be working with the programmers on implementing the staff animations. In addition, we're going to be polishing up the movement animations and using Unity's blend trees to make smoother transitions. For prop art, next sprint, we're going to be increasing the size of the glider. Due to some feedback, we decided that it needed to be a lot bigger and take up more screen real estate.
So in terms of the 2D art, during this sprint, we mainly worked on the UI stuff. We polished the design of the UI and colored the line art of the icons and guidebook. I also put some random symbols on the pages to make the book look ancient. We also made some UI like the buttons and sidebar for the main menu. And for the next sprint, we will keep working on polishing the UI stuff and finalize the map art based on the designer's work.
For the VFX side of things, we received a lot of feedback that although the VFX for the players' abilities were moving, they still looked static because it was just in a straight line. We worked to make a VFX that uses Bezier curves and position targets in order to create a stream that could act kind of like Mercy's stream from Overwatch to hopefully give a more dynamic feel to the player when activating crystals or using the stream in any other way. We also began to refine airstreams to replace the blue box that had previously been there. And as we move into Sprint 5, we'll focus on adjusting these even further to make them fit in with the world around them and feel loose but still powerful. As we move into Sprint 5 for VFX, we really want to build up the environment with things like fireflies, leaves, and sparkles to really make the world feel alive. One thing that we really wanted to focus on with Cirro is the development of our world and the story and the kind of lore and narrative, and why is the player in the space that they're in, and the way that we're doing that is by implementing cutscenes. So the first cutscene we have is going from the tutorial to the kind of main islands level. So we began to place the cameras and create the animation tracks and activation tracks using Unity's timeline feature in order to create these cutscenes.
On the composition side of things, both the day and night compositions have been completed, and they work out to about a 3.5 minute long loop. This, however, does feel a little bit longer due to the day and night cycle dynamic mix. And moving forward, I'll be focused on the cinematic composition for the cutscene. On the sound design side, the wind ambience has been completed with a dynamic mix. This changes the attenuation of the mixer if the player is moving very fast or is off of the islands. Additionally, the glider open and close has been created, as well as the sundial sound effects. Moving forward, I will be creating footsteps for the remaining materials, namely for stone and water, as well as sound effects for the push and pull abilities.
Thank you for watching Cirro's Sprint 4 presentation, and we'll see you at project launch!